Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you all. As Ian said, I'm Steve Doel, and I'm the Senior Transport Officer at West Berkshire Council. I've been in the transport industry some 25 years, which makes me feel a bit old almost. But I've chosen to chat to you today about a topic, that topic being school minibuses, and that's not really mainstream for us in local authorities, but I hope you might find my presentation quite interesting. I've split it into two parts, the good and the bad initially, which is just telling you about some work we've done with our schools, looking at their minibuses and how they operate them. And then the second thing I'd like to talk to you about, part two, is how we've engaged with some of these schools and how we've got a new win-win, innovative way of contracting with them and actually making them into home-to-school transport operators. So without further ado, I hope you find it interesting. Let's tell you, first of all, about the situation we had in West Berkshire. My role changed about 2010, and as Ian said, they asked me to look at some risk management work, and that was kind of on the back of the Corporate Manslaughter Act work that was done. And for the first time, we started looking at transport that was kind of outside of our remit. So I was looking at the sort of work that residential care homes might do, and then I got onto my radar school minibuses. And we've got about 65 schools in West Berkshire, and to a man, they either all have their own minibuses or they borrow minibuses from elsewhere. Those of you who don't know, West Berkshire is very, very rural. So because it's very rural, we use lots and lots of minibuses. So 65 schools. I thought, let's take a 10% of them. Let's go and look at 6 schools completely at random and see what sort of a state their minibuses are in, and more importantly, how they're operating them. Are they being safe? Are they being efficient? And I've got to be really honest, it was a fascinating day out because I went around these 6 schools and it was a horror story. Everyone I spoke to didn't know what a D1 driving licence was. Nobody had a Section 19. They were using them for all sorts of things. And it was a real frightener. So based on that, thinking that 10%, you know, maybe I've just chosen the wrong 10%. Maybe the other 90% are okay. I put aside some time and I carried out an audit of all of our 65 schools to find out how they were operating their school minibuses. My line there says revealed an almost 100% non-compliance. That pretty much is about what it was. You know, none of them were doing anything right at all. It was very scary. My audit was really simple. I wasn't being too searching. I was just looking at the real basics. These are legal requirements that have been in place for many years. I know them like the back of my hand. It turned out the schools generally didn't know the first thing about them. So I looked at some, I'll just do the 9 categories I looked at. I looked at driver licensing, the D1 issues, which is very clear. I looked to see what they did in the way of routine safety inspections. I wanted to look and see who the buses were being used by or who they were being hired to. I wanted to know what they were charging, if they were charging, and if they were charging, what sort of money they were charging, how they came up with that. I wanted to find out how the minibuses were registered and insured. I wanted to see some information that they were carrying out daily walk-round checks. I wanted to see the record keeping. Who was driving the vehicle this time last week? You know, give me some information. And I wanted to know about their driver training and their assessing. Here's just some of the horror stories. I won't dwell on them too much. The second one down is a amusing story. I went to a secondary school where the bursar was very pleased to see me. I've always wondered about these buses, he said. I've got 2. Tell me about them. I had no idea how to go about the insurance on them. He said, so I've registered them in my own name at my own private house address, and the insurance is there, but it's okay because it's for any driver. And I just fell over because that is clearly, you know, so wrong. The first one on the list there is another big one as well. Non-D1 drivers. Now, I don't want to go down this road, but we could talk a lot about can you have a non-D1 driver? You could do technically if they're a volunteer. That doesn't work with our schools. You know, we were looking for D1 drivers for all of ours. And very often we had non-D1 drivers driving these buses. Some other things there, you know, that just very, very clearly we had no compliance with. So what did I do? I could have buried my head, but I thought best not to. We've got an accident waiting to happen here. So I put aside some time and did quite a lot of work. The first two things, the briefing for the heads and the briefing for the governors. It was really important that these people who run these schools know that they've got potentially a very, very big problem. So I did some published briefings and went around to lots of the schools and delivered some personal briefings to them as well. At the same time, I wrote a very, very detailed policy and procedures document for West Berkshire Council. So it was made very, very clear what the expectations are legally with operating these school minibuses. Then I did a simple one. I went back to basics, just a sheet of A4 that could be given to everyone who's going to drive one of these buses, because ultimately the people who are going to be driving them are the ones that will get the points on their licence and the conscience in their heart if something goes wrong. And that really sort of pointed out the very, very, very basics. I also then went a little bit further. I devised a whole set of common forms, you know, for hiring, for driver licence checking, all that sort of thing, daily records, weekly records, and just published that to the entire West Berkshire Council network. So really simple. Every school has exactly the same documentation as the school next door to them. Final bit on there, I put in Midas training. Previously, our local authority had no minibus driver training in place. There had been a driving assessment that was not compulsory, but we put in compulsory Midas training, and I deliver that myself, and that's great, that's really good. I think Midas is an excellent scheme. Did it work? 2011, I carried out exactly the same audit as I'd done in 2010. Am I disappointed? 30% non-compliance? I don't know, it takes a while for some of this to go through maybe, doesn't it? 2012, I've just finished in December, and I'm about a 10% non-compliance at the moment, and maybe a little bit of me says I won't crack those final 10%, but I've covered my back in a way by producing all the briefings and trying really hard to get this right. It's been quite a lot of work though, I must say, and really quite eye-opening. I was trying to avoid this really. This is an Iveco minibus that's no longer in our fleet, as you can see. This poor old lovely bus. It's a great shame. It was one of our, yeah, it was a nice bus. It had an electrical fault, a fire, and this bus was destroyed. The fire investigators say in about 5 minutes, nothing left of the bus. It's a wheelchair-accessible one. It had just come away from a job where it had a young man in a wheelchair and 4 or 5 autistic children on board. It could have been, life-wise, much, much worse than we've got there. That's a bus that we replaced in a couple of days, but had we have hurt someone, or dare I say, worse, you know, it would have been a very different matter. The school that owned this bus had already been through my audit, my scheme, and they'd been very, very good. They'd been superb at taking on all the actions that I'd asked them to do. So therefore, when we had VOSA, the police and the fire investigation people around, we actually got quite a clean bill of health. The driver had a D1, the insurance was proper, all the records were up to date, everything was quite okay. And it was just one of those things that happened. Dare I say it could have been very, very different under other circumstances. This is what we're trying to achieve, a safe and efficiently operated school minibus fleet. Not asking a lot really, is it? There are kids we're driving around in there, and we need to be looking after them. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. That's quite scary really, isn't it? You're going to go back to your local authorities and see what your schools are doing. The interesting bit from it is that you might argue it's not got a great deal to do with a transport officer in a local authority. These are schools that are self-governing, looking after themselves, but we felt that we had a responsibility. Corporate Manslaughter Act said, actually, you're the transport experts. These people are not. They're education experts, really. So really hope you all go back and have a look at what your schools are doing. This next bit I want to talk to you about, we like our innovations in West Berkshire. We like doing things a little bit different. We like thinking out of the box. And we came up with schools as operators, and I'd like the opportunity in the next couple of minutes of just telling you what we've done. It's a scheme we're doing successfully in West Berkshire, and it's a real win-win for both sides. There's an age-old problem here, tied in with school minibuses. Every school you talk to wants a nice shiny minibus, and we know what happens. They spend £30,000 having raised all this money, and the thing tends to sit in their yard for an awful lot of the school term, and occasionally gets driven by a caretaker or a PE teacher, and ends up 5 years' time worth absolutely nothing whatsoever, having done a very, very low mileage. And then they've got to try and raise some more money to buy a new one. From the local authority point of view, the bit at the bottom there, we in West Berkshire, we're very rural indeed. We haven't got many operators, and so we're a little bit over a barrel sometimes. We're paying, fairly strong money for our minibus operations, and we've got lots of them. Being so rural, we've got some route safety issues. The geography of our territory is such that we've got lots of little isolated villages, and therefore lots of minibuses running around. Costs us a lot of money. And in these times of austerity, we wanted to try and do something a little bit out of the box, something a little bit different. So we came up with an idea that we could help these schools to buy their own brand new or nearly new, very smart minibuses. But to help them pay for it, we could award them a home-to-school transport contract. Simple stuff, isn't it? But because they're a Section 19 operator, they're going to be not-for-profit, so they're going to be somewhat cheaper than the commercial operators that we would be dealing with. Everyone's a winner in this, without any doubt whatsoever, bar an operator, you might say, a commercial operator. But the schools and the local authorities are very, very much in a win-win situation. What I try to do in my scheme is to come up with a daily price, a not-for-profit daily price, of a school contract that will cover the standing costs and the running costs of that bus for every school day, but will also cover the standing costs of that bus for 365 days of the year. So technically, the bit that's going to cost money for the school is what they do that isn't a home-to-school contract. The home-to-school contract should pay for the vehicle for the entire year, and it should pay for the home-to-school contract element. We've got to be careful. It is not for profit, and so it's a lot of work involved in us at coming up with a deal which is not for profit. But if we get our sums right, it works out beautifully. Takes a fair bit of our time to do this, and it takes a very, very good buy-in from the school itself. And I end up writing quite a robust business case to take to the schools, to meet the senior management team and the governors, to try and find a way of helping support them, get a new minibus, and do us a favour in the transport team as well by having, let's be honest, a cheaper way of operating the home-to-school contract. I like to think we're the experts. We know about transport, and therefore within our transport team we've got people who can help these schools buy their buses, do the training, do all the administration, do all the work for them. And we can do all the work with VOSA as well for their Section 19s. It's straightforward stuff for us. It's our everyday job. But for the schools, it's perhaps a little bit more difficult for them to get their heads around. But we're there to help them. I then wanted to take it a little bit further, because I go around these schools that have now got some nice minibuses, and 190 days of the year are doing 2 peaks, 2 school journeys for us. But what happens to those buses of a weekend and of an evening? And I thought, is there a way that I can extend this a little bit further? And I spent a fair bit of time with VOSA, with the traffic commissioners, and we came up with this idea that we could perhaps have a community bus project. Now, what I'm trying to find here is within, say, the school catchment area, let's look about the other not-for-profit organisations that might benefit by this bus outside of school hours. I'll give you an example. We've got a school at Lambourne, which is right in the middle of nowhere, very, very isolated. And we set up a community bus project scheme for them and that now involves, under the umbrella of their community bus project, allowing the guides, the scouts, the WI and the local bell ringing group, all not-for-profit people, to be able to benefit by that bus outside of the school day. And that's been a really, really good use of a relatively expensive resource. 30 grand's worth of bus, let's try and make it work a little bit. Yeah. These are some genuine savings. This is another middle of nowhere school. This is a place called Great Shefford near Newbury, and it's again middle of nowhere, and we have 2 miles away children that have to come in on a route safety service into the school, and we had a commercial operator who was delivering that for us every day. That was £120 a day. Not expensive by our ways at all. The school now do it for me on a not-for-profit on a Section 19 as the schools as operators, and we pay them £75 a day. That's £8.5 grand saving every year. Now, we're in austerity, and some deals like that make a great help. Yeah, they're very useful. I'm sure you've all got routes that are similar to that, yeah. I've got 7 schemes for 9 buses at the moment. I've got business cases out for 3 others at the moment, and a couple of other schools that are just asking me some more info about it. So the schools benefit, the local authority benefits. It's a win-win all round. I hope you found that interesting. Yeah, smashing. Thank you very much. Thank you.